Welcome to Top Talkers. We have a great panel joining us this morning from Majic 100, Trisha Owens, from CTV News at Noon, Leanne Cusack, and Carson joining us from Bob Carson Show. Okay, this is an interesting topic for us because we all work in media, and so the things that we say are often reflected, our opinions and so forth. There is a radio announcer out of Montreal. His name is Jacques Fabi, who has a French language program. They were talking about conflict in the Middle East. A caller calls in and says, do you know about the Holocaust? And of course, Jacques says, well, yes. And she says, it was the most beautiful thing that happened in history. When most of us would likely think, next caller, please, she actually continued on at this discussion. I mean, this created a huge controversy. He has been suspended without pay for a month, but it is creating a lot of dialogue. All of us working in, especially too with radio, what are your thoughts on the involvement of this situation?
So taking live calls, of course, always tricky because you never know what they're going to say. However, I believe that he's been running this call-in show for 35 years. I would think he'd be skilled enough to know how to gracefully get out of such a controversial, insulting call, and he should have done so.
You're shaking your head right now, Leanne.
No, I was nodding my head. I think Trisha nailed it, and I think you nailed it too. It's a next caller. There's just not even room for that kind of hatred on the air.
Now, Montreal, never mind like exactly what it was that he said, which was deplorable for one thing, and I think as broadcasters we have a responsibility to, you know, engage listeners, but at the same time too, sometimes these situations where you have a listener go off like that, there's one or two ways you can do it. You can either cut completely and shut them off altogether, or actually give him the platform or her the platform to say what they want, to show everyone just how ignorant and stupid some people can be.
But that wasn't necessarily the case. This discussion went on, and so you start to think of this in terms of hate crime, and are we allowing something like this to be on the airwaves? And there were so many, different things that could have happened. I mean, we were talking about the Holocaust. We were talking about 6 million lives lost. I mean, and to be honest with you too, as I'm Jewish, and to think of the amount of Holocaust survivors that are actually living in Montreal that would have been listening to a program like that. Like, what do you say to them?
At what point do you say, okay, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but when those opinions really start hurting other people, I think then as broadcasters, as you mentioned, Cub, we have a responsibility to say, okay, we're not going to continue on this platform.
But French language broadcasting in Quebec is a completely different animal compared to the rest of the country as well. I'm not by any way stretch of the imagination, accepting what the guy said. As a veteran in the industry for a long time, he should have known better than that, especially with Montreal and the rich tradition that the Jewish community has in Montreal. At the same time, too, there are a lot of French language radio stations in Quebec that they go looking for this kind of attention. Radio X in Quebec City actually had Jeff Fillion, who was a very polarizing character. Yeah, he had fantastic numbers, but at the same time, too, he was spewing out hatred, he was spewing out filth. The amount of swearing that gets allowed on Quebec radio compared to, I would love to tee off. And bring up my own Quebecois on the air kind of thing, but I know where the playing field is. And I think in this instance right here, it comes down to the responsibility of the host himself for allowing this to happen, the producer, the phone screener behind the scenes who should have been there, and the programming department themselves. If they didn't have a rule in place saying these topics right here are out of bounds, this probably wouldn't have happened.
Well, he will be back on the air in a month's time, and a lot of people saying he should have been fired.
And he was off for a month with pay, wasn't he?
With pay, yeah.
Okay.
It was with, I thought it was without.
See, so it's a double-sided coin, and I think a lot of times there's this, I don't know, this way broadcasting is going in where shocking people as opposed to getting the facts out, and scaring people as opposed to getting the facts out, they're two different beasts altogether.
Okay, so speaking of things outspoken and different opinions coming through, many people are aware of the show 2.5 Men. Of course, Charlie Sheen out of the show. He actually sends a tweet last night saying everyone that's on the show is cursed. Here's the newest news coming off of that show. The youngest, the half part of 2.5 Men, Angus T. Jones, has made a statement. He's kind of turned to the church, and we're going to play the statement that he just made for you, and then we'll get into that discussion. Here it is.
2.5 Men. If you watch 2.5 Men, please stop watching 2.5 Men. I'm on 2.5 Men. I don't want to be on it. Please stop watching it. Please stop filling your head with filth. Please. It's people say it's just entertainment. The fact that it's entertainment, do some research on the effects of television and your brain, and I promise you'll have a decision. You'll have a decision to make when it comes to the television, and especially with what you watch on the television.
It's a small portion of an overall sort of epiphany, a personal epiphany for him, which he called his sort of religious breakthrough. And I think in the tape he went through sort of his experimentation with drugs and what life had been like for him and all the rest. And then ultimately it culminates in him complaining about the show while he still gets paid $350,000
exactly
per episode.
Per
episode.
Yeah.
But what's, I mean, poor Chuck Lorre. People either have
Or John Cryer. He just wants to go to work. He just wants to go to work.
my money.
He's getting blindsided left, right, and center. He's the most stable guy on the show, and no one had heard of him since, like, he played Ducky in Pretty in Pink. And then all of a sudden, he's got this great gig. He's getting good money. They're getting Emmys. He's getting a lot of attention. Charlie Sheen goes off the rails. And now this kid. Now, if you've done your research on the guy that was sitting beside him, this guy's a little loco a la cabeza, as they say, all right? Like, he's talking about loco a la cabeza. He's talking about cannibalism and some things. He's talking about how rapper Jay-Z works for Satan. It's just, when you're getting paid $350,000 an episode, it's very easy for you to sit there and talk about what you're doing is wrong, because the guy's banked the money away, so he's going to be fine for quite a long time. He's not going to turn into the Danny Bonaducci's and the Leif Garretts of the world.
And he's now coming out apologizing for those remarks and apologizing to his fellow actors, and it's kind of like, yeah, oops, maybe.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
If those are the beliefs that you think of, then those beliefs should be strong enough for you not to make a
That's
U-turn
exactly
24 hours later.
But I would say do not drink the water on the set, because it's either breakdown or breakthrough.
It's the fluoride in the water.
There's
that's causing
something
it.
going on there. His mother saying that she fears that her son is being exploited by this church. And they're called, this religious channel that this gentleman runs is the Forerunner Chronicles. And so you watch, there was part 1 and part 2, each about 14, 15 minutes long, and you are literally watching this transformation of, you know, of the dialogue just kind of it was edited, and it was really bizarre.
It's almost like it's a form of being a parasite in a sense, because a lot of this comes down to trust issues. Maybe there's some parental issues. You know, when the kid's that young and has that much attention on TV, you know, it kind of goes to their heads a little bit as well. And then they kind of feel like, well, I don't need mom and dad to make decisions for me, but I'm still kind of young enough that I kind of need some guidance. And then these people swoop in under the guise of organized religion, and then they completely turn it around. And like, I watched, and I can't, because I watched an entertainment show the night before where they were talking about this, an entertainment show the night before, one of those gossip shows, because I just wanted to make sure, because I know we were talking about it on Bob, so I wanted to make sure I knew what was going on, and I couldn't believe, just 5 years ago, this kid was saying that this character that he was just talking about was fictional, was exactly himself. He was actually getting paid to come on set and be himself. So what happened in the last 5 years? Hollywood happened in the last 5 years.
Well, it is it's the third highest rated comedy in Canada, isn't it?
I don't know why, but
most watched.
to each his own.
Most watched.
Unbelievable. Well, a very interesting topic. Thank you so much to Trisha, Leanne, and to Cub for being part of Top Talkers today.